Hello again and welcome to another edition of Newsmaker of the Week. I'm Leon Warden and I'm pleased to welcome this week's Newsmaker returning guest, George Runner.
Leon, good to be with you.
Returning guest, but actually this is the first time you've ever been on this show.
I think so, in this role.
As a member of the California State Board of Equalization.
That's right.
So welcome.
Thank you, Leon.
Of course, your lovely wife Sharon was
supposed to be here.
The Senate last month.
And supposed to be here, but apparently they need her up in Sacramento today. So.
Yeah, but I guess, so you're here, she's still up there. You got some experience coordinating your schedules, though.
We do.
You were in the Senate and she was in the Assembly,
we do.
So this is really kind of nothing new. You're used to
we
this.
oftentimes would leave each other behind during different times.
Now, how does that work? I mean, you know, is there some law that, I mean, I know the Senate might be called back to vote on some budget bill. Is there some law that says that, you know, senators have to be within spitting distance of the Capitol or something?
No. Usually it has, you know, sometimes they'll when they put them on call, sometimes they'll say, we need you here in an hour. Mm-hmm. So then you decide what you can do. Or we need you here within 5 hours. So then you know you can go home. And it also then depends a little bit upon what that person may be doing in that particular part of the discussions and the negotiations that are going on. So
she decided to stay there and do her job.
So and there's a couple of issues that she's engaged in on that deal. So you know, they need to make sure that things get done correctly.
You know, honestly,
if you're not there, who knows what happens?
I figured all the Republicans in the legislature would just make like the Wisconsin Democrats and run to Oregon or something, so they don't have to be there to vote for Jerry Brown's budget.
The difference is that in California, they'd say, okay, see you later. And then they'd have their vote, kind of like they ended up in Wisconsin.
Like they ended up doing.
Because we don't have that necessary rule that you've got to have one person from the opposite party. And although they did apparently get a loophole in the Wisconsin deal, so they could go ahead and do that. But yeah, they only need the Republican for the 2/3 vote. And actually, remember, the voters voted for a simple majority budget last November. So in reality, the Democrats up there can actually do this. The governor can sign it. The problem is, they don't have enough money. So then you come back.
And as to whether they can pass a budget and raise taxes with less than a 2/3 vote is a matter for the lawyers to decide.
That's a different issue.
You know, thinking of Wisconsin, what do you think about all that? What do you think about, and more broadly, what do you think about public employees' right to, collective bargaining?
Well, I think each state will end up dealing with that kind of issue in its own way. I mean, the things that happen in Wisconsin, the discussions that are happening in Oregon, in Ohio, some of those are not going to be discussions that we have here in the legislature in California. Mm-hmm. Simply because the partisan makeup just makes it so that you don't have that discussion in regards to whether or not how you look at the issue of bargaining, what do you bargain for? Mm-hmm. And so we're not going to have it the way they had it there. I think, and I think in those states what you have is you really do see that elections have consequences. And so you have Wisconsin in particular, which not only did Wisconsin I think was the only state, as I recall, somebody had told me, where they flipped the governor to Republican and they flipped both houses to Republican. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're having then is a reaction to that. Now, because of that, certain policies are going to be addressed. And so that's why they're addressing these policies that will never be addressed, I shouldn't say never, won't be addressed with the makeup that we have here in the state of California.
And of course in Wisconsin, one of the things they're dealing with is, collective bargaining over pensions and
pensions, work conditions, a lot of other kinds of things, health insurance. Those are the issues that they're trying to differentiate there a bit.
Because one of the things that, I don't know the situation and the particulars in Wisconsin, but certainly here, I've heard it said that one of the worst mistakes that our current Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. said that the former Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. did was approve collective bargaining for public employee unions.
Well, if he did believe that, he's got the chance to undo it. I don't believe he'll do that.
That's certainly not there. But pensions. Talk to me about pensions. I mean, there's this, what, 24, 25, 26 billion dollar deficit that we hear about, but then the whole unfunded pension problem, and you hear it anywhere from $150 billion problem in the future to a $500 billion problem in the future.
Right, and I think it's hard to figure out what does that actually mean for us today and in this current budget in the next few years. I just was reading this morning.
Sounds like a train wreck.
Well, it is, and that's why it has to be resolved, and that's why even though there is not the votes to be able to take care of this in the legislature or try to deal with pensions in a reform in a meaningful way, because you don't have the party makeup that allows you to do that. The fact is, I think it has to be. And I think my Democrat colleagues up there have got to understand that, because if they don't, it is going to be taken care of, and it's going to be through an initiative process or something else, because the people really do believe that there needs to be some adjustment to what we currently have. I mean, we cannot offer benefits that we cannot afford. I believe you need to stick by what you've got your agreements on. People have made life decisions based upon what their future is going to be. Then that's fine. You keep those in place. But when it comes to the issue of new people coming in, or the amount to which a current employee may have to contribute to their pension, the amount to which the kind of benefits you may have in your health insurance in regards to your co-pays, I think all of those need to be up for discussion today in order to start saving some money.
And of course, when we put it in those terms, it sounds far away, but these are the school teachers and the firefighter who lives next door, and those people who pay into CalPERS and other things, who are taking this hit if we change the rules.
Well, I'm always, taking a hit is, I think, one way to phrase it. The fact is that most surveys show that in the state of California, for example, right now, if you are a state employee and you are in some of those very good programs, that if you put your salary package together along with your benefit package together, you probably are doing better than the private sector. So I think it begs the question that the private sector asks the taxpayer out there and says, I don't get this. How come I'm being asked for a tax increase, and those folks end up with a better package than I have? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like I feel like I'm paying at both ends right now, and I think it's a real question. I think it's a real issue. Schools, I think, are a good example. I mean, it's always interesting to me right now, and I think this is true with most of the school districts down here, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I get it wrong, is right now most schools are still giving step and column increases to their faculties. So here we are rolling back costs. I mean, we're trying to, we're putting furlough days in. We're laying off people.
Cutting back the school year.
Cutting back the school year. And at the same time, somebody all of a sudden a teacher just got a raise because they happened to go into their 5th year. Or happened to get a raise because they just picked up 15 units that may or may not happen to have anything to do with their ability to teach. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that I think kind of need to take a look at. How can we do that right now? And still be able then to do the things that we must do, like teach kids.
And it always gets partisanized, putting the language of, we either need to cut everything or we need to raise taxes. And, I keep coming back to that 2004, 2005 California Performance Review. Mm-hmm. And, the idea of eliminating 100 boards and commissions or consolidating 100 boards and commissions that could be consolidated or don't do anything. Right. But more fundamental things like, merge the franchise tax board and the state board of equalization and the VLF fee collection, function into one.
Yeah, and I had a bill last year to seek to do that. I think there are some efficiencies that we ought to be looking at. The problem is the numbers are so big that we've got to deal with. We need to do that, plus we've got to look at the issue of our government. Let me give you an example right now that this month is such illustrative of the challenge that we have and why it is taxpayers shouldn't pay more taxes. I needed a new desktop printer for my desk. Mm-hmm. The printer I needed I got at my home for $95 at Costco. And so I said, I need one of these $95 printers here in my office. Mm-hmm. In order for my printing, for my computer. And is there a way for me, I'm new here, is there a way for me to run out and get that and for somebody, is there a BOE credit card or something that we go and buy this stuff with? How does this work? Oh no, we've got a purchasing process that we have to go through. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, well, I need another printer, $95 over at Costco. And so, a week went by and then 2 weeks went by and I said, where's this printer? Where's my printer? I need a printer. Mm-hmm. And finally they said, well, we've been working with the folks that have to make that inquiry and make that purchase. Mm-hmm. So finally, about a week and a half later, my printer shows up. I said, how much did we pay for that printer? $175 we paid for that printer. Mm-hmm. See, that to me, that's where the real money is. I mean, you think about that. Why in the world, I would never pay $175 for that printer. Right. But because government has to do the way government does it, taxpayer paid $175 for a printer I could have gotten a Costco for 95.
But it's not only the 175 for the printer. How much time was spent?
You're absolutely right
on the bureaucratic process.
The total acquisition cost of this printer.
You're talking $450 screwdriver, and that's how it happens.
You know, and to me, those are the kind of things. That's why as these issues come before voters right now, and if voters are going to get this idea of should we keep these taxes going, should we increase these taxes? You know, I'm a strong believer in saying no, because the problem is you'll never solve the problem of why it is that we pay $80 more for that printer, or almost twice as much, as long as you just keep the money coming to Sacramento.
Okay, but how do you go about doing that, though? I think the bigger the bureaucratic organization, because, you know, the state is not the only bureaucracy that has that kind of acquisition process, and I think the bigger the bureaucracy, the bigger a problem that is.
Right.
So how do you change the purchasing process so that George Renner can go out and buy his own printer and get reimbursed the $75 actually?
You know, and that's what we're looking into. I mean, one of the big changes that we've made is when you're in the legislature, you're kind of in this little, cell that's not connected a lot to what else is happening in the bureaucracy of government. You know, the folks all in the Capitol all work for the legislature, and so there's a lot of rules. Unfortunately, unfortunately for Californians, a lot of the rules that they put on Californians, they don't apply to their own staff and whatnot to kind of operate their operation. But now that I'm outside of that, I'm in this bigger bureaucracy, this whole civil service process. We're beginning to be exposed to things we've never heard of before. We've just never understood that. And so to me, we're looking at that. Those are the answers that we've got to find. What is it that helps us become a little more nimble for the protection of the taxpayers?
Right. I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to find out what this Board of Equalization thing is.
Did you know SCVTV reaches over 250,000 people in the Santa Clarita Valley? SCVTV's sports and event coverage has audiences in the tens of thousands. SCVTV.com has nearly 200,000 page views a month, and no other Santa Clarita media outlet has more friends on Facebook than SCVTV. Can you imagine what it would mean to your business if your message reached all those people? If you need to generate more local business, or if you would like to uniquely position your company within the community, then consider SCVTV in your marketing campaign. SCVTV, the only local television for Santa Clarita.
Hi, I'm Miles McNamara, and you're watching SCVTV, local television for Santa Clarita.
Here in the Santa Clarita Valley, we get so little rain, but we have 3 easy ways to save water every day, all year long. 1. Make sure your sprinklers work and don't aim at the sidewalk. You'll save 500 gallons. 2. Don't forget this 25-cent washer to fix leaks and save 600 gallons. 3. Plant things native to our valley and save 750 gallons. It's so easy, even I can do it. But you're the one who can save money and water for our future.
Welcome back. We're here with George Renner, who was just elected to the California Board of Equalization. And I think go out and ask 10 people what the Board of Equalization does, and you'll probably get 10 blank stares.
Probably.
So you've been there about 3 months now.
Unless you get some guy out there who owns a business and he writes out a check every once in a while.
Well, sure, but I mean, franchise tax board, everybody knows what that is. That's like our state IRS. Those are the evil tax collectors. But you've been there about 3 months. Have you figured out what the Board of Equalization
it's
does?
been really, well, we've been learning, and it's very interesting. And let me just kind of give you some examples of the things that we've been involved in. And ultimately, the way I simply put it is the State Board of Equalization is a tax collection agency for special taxes and sales tax and use tax. Franchise Tax Board is a tax collection agency for income tax, corporate individual income tax. So, but on that aside, what then we end up doing then is dealing with the issue of interpreting tax policy. Is something taxed at this rate or isn't it taxed at this rate? And we end up with different kind of rules and standards and agreements and debates in regards to what that is. That's one of the things that we do. The other thing we deal with is the issue.
Let me stop you there. Like a candy bar and a vending machine. You decide whether that should have a tax. Do you decide whether they should? Well,
again, again, sometimes things are just not clear.
You don't make the decision about what should be taxed.
No, but sometimes things are unclear in regards to in terms of what if it meets a certain criteria. For there was an issue in regards to that has come up in regards to the tax on wine products for instance, in the last few months. Wine is taxed at a certain rate, and distilled spirits, or spirits, not distilled, spirits are taxed at a certain rate. So there's a debate as to whether or not if you put certain things in wine, not necessarily more alcohol, maybe it's a water, maybe it's a filler of some kind. Does that now not make it wine? If it's not wine, then it's taxed at this other rate, which is about 10 times higher than wine.
Okay.
And so there was an effort to try to say, yeah, if you use, and again, these are oftentimes these wine cooler products. They're saying, oh, these wine cooler products aren't wine. They need to be taxed at this higher rate, because they put other things in the wine.
So there isn't specific legislation that says a wine cooler or wine with this and this additive.
Oftentimes,
there's no legislation. Rather, you decide.
Can be, but oftentimes what happens is there's ambiguity in the law.
Okay.
And so that what that does is it calls for an interpretation. So that's one of the issues that the board
lawyers
does.
just figure it out and it goes to court and they
Right. No. Well, ultimately, it could go to court if what it is that you decided is outside what the statute said, right, the law, then you could go to court. But if the law is ambiguous and allows for that interpretation, then indeed it is. So there's many of those things. I've had issues with for instance, that product. We're dealing with one right now in regards to ethanol, in regards to where that line is of E85, which is a certain tax treatment. So we're dealing with those all the time. So those are tax interpretations. And then the other thing that we deal with is the issue of appeals. So if anybody has any of appeal, and the appeals not only deal with the special taxes or the enterprise zone credits, for instance, would be a part of that we're working down here, sales tax issues, but even income tax and corporate income tax then ends up being appealed to the Board of Equalization.
Okay.
Give you an example. We've got an appeal coming up that has to deal with a box company up in the Central Valley. This box company is wanting to take R&D tax credit, research and development tax credit. The auditor says, "You're a box company. You don't do R&D." And the box company says, "Yeah, we do.
Right.
We have to do R&D. We box a lot of specialty products."
So you're the ones who arbitrate that.
And so what happened is the franchise tax board auditor said, "Oh no, you don't get R&D."
Right.
These people appeal it, and eventually then we hear it. So we're going to hear that, and we're going to decide whether or not this company really does do R&D and therefore gets a tax credit.
Right.
So that's kind of the issues that we deal with.
Right.
And then the other issue we do is that there's a lot of staff out there that are doing tax collection, tax conformity information, and we have to keep them on track, making sure they're doing what they're doing. I'll give you another example. One of the projects we're dealing with there. There's a project that we have where we have staff that go out and go into communities to help people understand that they have the proper kind of licenses and certificates, and because if they don't, then they're probably not paying their proper taxes.
Okay.
So the idea was to go out and educate. Well, we got a hold of the training manual. And the training manual then gives these individuals some suggested questions they ask. So the suggested questions were things like, how much do you pay for rent? What was your largest purchase last month? How many employees do you have? How much do you what's your gross revenue in an average day? And I looked at those questions and said, this is not what this program's supposed to be. These are clearly pre-audit questions that are determined whether or not we're going to come back and audit them.
Right.
So we got to, I instructed the staff that this is inappropriate. We're not going to ask these kinds of questions. So those are the kind of those are the kind of involvements that we have, and in many ways we protect taxpayers. We had I give you two taxpayer protection issues that we've been able to do already. Franchise Tax Board. Our Franchise Tax Board changed their requirements for e-filing, and if you are a certain kind of a filer, you had by law to file electronically.
Okay.
Some individual in the Central Valley didn't e-file correct, large payment, did not e-file, but they sent it in.
Right.
And this was the first time they were supposed to e-file. They sent it in. The state got the money. They turned around and gave them a huge fine.
Because they didn't e-file.
Because they didn't e-file. But the state got the money. They just didn't understand the rule. And they got
Did they
the
file
fine.
on paper, or did they not file and just send the check?
No, they filed on paper and they sent the check. They just didn't e-file. And so we met with them. We called them up, the State Franchise Tax Board. We said, "What is this? Is this under? Does the law make you have to do that? Because sometimes fines and penalties are in the statute. We can't do anything about it. But oftentimes they're not.
Right.
So the first question we ask is this a law, or is this something that you guys do? Well, it's something we do. Well, then don't you think you ought to change that? And so we've not only saved that taxpayer that money, but they stopped doing it for every taxpayer. And then decided, well, we need to give them instruction next time, not a penalty. When people pay on time, they just did it wrong.
Yeah.
So that was one. Another guy was an RV dealer. He has RV shops, 2 in California and 1 in Oregon. Well, in Oregon, you don't pay sales tax.
Right.
California, you do pay sales tax. Our guys went up and audited him in Oregon. Saw all these people who bought from California.
Found that everybody from California is buying from their store in Oregon.
They had a lot of people bought from California. They said, we think these people from California have been sent from your California stores to buy in Oregon. Therefore, you owe us sales tax on all these sales. Well, the problem is, no, that's not, people look on the internet, people get where they want to go, understand how to buy things. A lot of people with RVs actually buy them out of state, keep them out of state in order to avoid the sales tax. You can't automatically assume.
Besides which, there's already use tax, right?
Well, there's a use tax if they brought that in, and then we're going to use it in California, then they would be responsible for the use tax.
Yeah, the
buyer, the individual,
yeah.
but not the dealer. So the dealers got hit with a $50 million hit. We went to hearing. I asked the staff, do you have any, were there signs up in these California businesses that said you could buy this cheaper in Oregon?
Don't buy from our store, buy from our.
Yeah. Was there a sale, was the sales commission, with a guy who's a sales commission guy, what was his advantage for sending somebody to Oregon? Do you find any paperwork that says you get the commission if you get it to Oregon? There wasn't anything.
Right.
So we said this is not righteous.
Yeah.
And the guy didn't pay us to have to pay us $50 million. So those are the kind of some of the kinds of things we do.
So, we were talking a little earlier about the budget proposal. Well, kind of we were talking about it. Does the Board of Equalization have anything to do with the budget process?
Well, we do in some sense, because a lot of times the legislature will come to us for estimates. If we do this tax or this happens, what's the estimate going to be?
Okay.
The one that people may be aware of a little bit now is what's called the Amazon tax, the Nexus tax. Legislature had a bill. And they say, hey, we want to go ahead and under this scenario, we want Amazon to have to pay sales tax. How much money will that get us? And so the board's responsibility and the economists that we have at the board are supposed to kind of work that out. Well, we got involved in that one too, because what they were doing is you have to create what's called Nexus, brick and mortar. Barnes & Noble have brick and mortar here, so you go on internet, and if you buy on the internet from Barnes & Noble, you have to pay us California state sales tax, just like if you were to go into the store.
Right.
Amazon doesn't. And so there's always this issue that says, okay, how do we create Nexus? So this law that's going through legislature says, well, if you happen to be what's called an affiliate doesn't sell anything. An affiliate just gives information about something and sends them to some of these internet places, and then you buy from them. If you happen to be one of these places and you got a little doodad on that screen that sends them over to Amazon.com or Adorama cameras. Then
Cabela, if you're in a sporting
Cabela,
goods, doesn't have a presence
if
here.
Cabela had a, then that requires that particular their seller to have to pay California sales tax.
So just because you have a link on your website that links you to Amazon or Cabela or some other
and then you made a
place,
sale.
then you're an affiliate?
And you also then got some money. You got like a commission.
Okay.
That's the connection. Now because that Amazon or Cabela has got to pay the tax. Well, we don't like that law.
Now, is that already a law?
No, that's a law that they're trying to do.
That's part of the budget
And what
proposal,
this is and what they're trying to do is create Nexus, just like they're saying that's just like that building that Barnes & Noble's has.
Right.
Well, we don't think so.
Right.
And what we had our economists do, because we come up with numbers, what happens to the economy if all of a sudden California starts taxing all these things over here, and Amazon says, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Affiliate in California, you cannot send people to us anymore. What happens to these jobs?
Right.
And we found out that we actually lose more money than we gained by trying to tax what they did, because we lose their sales tax, we use their property tax. So one of the roles that we did in that deal is I had our guys do what's called a dynamic analysis. What happens if we do that? And so that's how we get related to the budget at times. We have to okay the numbers, because eventually they're going to ask the BOE to collect it. And so they want to know what the BOE thinks they're going to collect.
Right.
So that's an example of that.
You know that I'm personally all hot about our redevelopment zone and enterprise zone,
Yeah.
both of which we have here in Santa Clarita, both of which are absolutely wonderful and are fiscally conservative and doing the things that they're supposed to do. And now we got John Chain coming out with this report on study of other redevelopment agencies in other places, wherein he said that they aren't. One of the things that he said is that they aren't creating jobs. Now, redevelopment purpose is to cure blight. Not to create jobs. The Redevelopment Association went to the legislature and tried to get the legislature a couple of years ago to expand the definition to include job creation, but the legislature didn't get out of committee.
Right.
So their purpose is not to create jobs, but rather to cure blight. I don't know that there's a question in there, I'm just complaining, but Jerry Brown expects to get $1.7 billion out of redevelopment. By eliminating redevelopment, he expects to get $1.7 billion to help solve the budget deficit. Now we see redevelopment agencies, including our own, protecting their money.
Right.
Plus, we're in a down economy and property value has been falling. Do you think, is that amount of money something that you, as a member of the Board of Equalization, have studied whether that $1.7 billion is a realistic figure?
Well, of course, it's a changing figure right now because so many agencies have done just exactly what you talked about, and that is they're tying up their dollars. So therefore, those dollars aren't even going to be available. So I don't think those will be real at that point. I mean, the bottom line for me with redevelopment is redevelopment helps create tax base. What happens with redevelopment is you have a blighted area, you have an area and then you go ahead and you create development there. And as a result of that, you get a new property tax value. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have the redevelopment part of that, you'd never get the increased increment, the property. And so what you do is an incentive to that. The redevelopment agencies, the local governments, get to keep that incentive that they created through that redevelopment for a period of time. Mm-hmm. Now, if you make it all go away, what you end up with is just the old blighted property. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Besides which, you hear Jerry Brown saying how this money's going to go to schools. Well, as a former redevelopment commissioner in Lancaster, as well as I do, that a portion of the redevelopment tax increment gets passed back through to schools. You eliminate redevelopment, and that money doesn't go to schools.
Absolutely. Well, two things. Number one, as that property value increases because of the redevelopment investment there's a pass-through on that then goes to the schools that they get. And you're right, they get those dollars. Eventually what they're going to get is they're going to get the rest of that regular property tax once that redevelopment project area is closed down, because they have a lifetime attached to them. Mm-hmm. The only other alternative is the property never gets developed.
Right.
There's no money there anyhow.
Decline, property value goes down,
there's no money there
and
anyhow.
there's less tax being generated over time.
I think hopefully they'll come up with some good compromise on that issue.
What's the chance? Because they got about negative 2 days now from Jerry Brown's goal of.
To a degree, that's self-imposed. There's no reason why you have to have a June special election. You can have a July special election. You can have an August special election. So that's more of a self-imposed at that point. My greatest fear is that Sacramento may do what they do, which is not good, and that is they know they're not going to get the money either in redevelopment or in enterprise zones, but they need to balance the budget. So what they do is they book a number, even though they know the number may not get there, and they balance a budget based upon phony
and that's
projections.
the same exact smoke and mirrors that's been used to quote unquote balance the budget.
That's why
Schwarzenegger
I'm about as hardcore right now as I could get on this issue with tax issues and the money to Sacramento. There's about $86 billion that is going to come to Sacramento for general fund this year. Sacramento just ought to figure out how they want to spend the $86 billion.
In good times, it's like what, 105?
100, yeah. Well, and again, it'll get back up there. Just figure out how you want to spend your $86 billion.
Got to close it out. What's your gut? Are we going to see the elimination of redevelopment and enterprise zones?
Again, I don't know. I hope not. I think two things. Number one is I don't think the money's going to be there for the redevelopment issue, and I think there's huge lawsuits out there, I think, attached to the enterprise zone. People made business decisions based upon a tax credit, and now you take that tax credit away from them.
We have businesses in Newhall that made that decision based on redevelopment.
That's a breach. That's a breach of contract, and so I don't think that you can do that, and it certainly doesn't help what is the core of our problem, and that is getting people back to work.
George Runner, State Board of Equalization, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Leon.
And thank you for joining us. Missed any portion of this program, you can see it again and again on SCVTV.com. Check back here, Time Warner Cable Channel 20, AT&T UVerse 99, Sunday 8:30 a.m., Thursday 9 p.m. for another Newsmaker of the Week.